Mets. Meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife.
And how you doing, how you living, how you feeling, folks? Back for another episode of City Night Lights. Now, of course, I'm your host, and as always, glad to be back talking to you guys. My name's Zach. Back to talk another couple weeks of Mets baseball in the books. Very excited to get into it. Lots happened, so we'll just quickly go over a little schedule, talk what's happened, what's to come. We took on the Dodgers in a heavily contested series, which we ended up splitting in a 2-2 tie. Then we swept the Rockies, a nice little 3-0 win. Then we took on the Nationals and swept them as well, moved on to Tampa Bay, and I believe we just got swept by Tampa Bay, unfortunately. Yep, and we had just gotten swept by Tampa Bay. So, unfortunate way to end this last couple series of games, or really unfortunate way to end the homestead after two beautiful sweeps. But what are you going to do? Tomorrow, we're going to move on to the Braves down in Atlanta. So that'll be a fun series. And we're going to go play the Phils and then back playing the Braves. So these next couple series are going to be huge series, especially for division standings. This is just going to be an important couple games. We got to keep the Phils out. The Braves are pretty far back right now, but if they can go 4-2, that'll do a lot for them all of a sudden. That makes this division a lot tighter. And, only being 2.5 games up on the Phils right now, we still got to keep playing great baseball. So with that being said, let's get right into how we've been playing as a team. And I think it's important to talk about the batting, something that's just been unbelievably solid this year. I really never thought that this batting would gel this way. I knew Soto was going to be a beautiful piece, and he hasn't been so far to start the year, but I would say over the last 2 weeks, this man has been hot. Soto is finally starting to get it going. It's been very entertaining to watch, and let's just get a quick last 7-day split of Soto. Guy's got 5 ribbies, 14 total bases, which is the second most in the team, only behind Brandon Nimmo. Before the Rays series, I know he was having a crazy 7-day split, but now he's down at 286 average. But when you have a 423 OBP, I can be content with that. And he's got a plus 1,000 OPS over the last week. So that's the type of Juan Soto I like to see. I know last week he was at the same pace. It's just it's pretty cool to see Juan Soto, finally heating up, doing what he's got to do, taking care of business, and being the $770 million man that we paid him to be. So with that being said, we'll keep moving and grooving with other batters here. Another guy who's looked great last couple weeks, I feel like Marte, just in terms of watching the games, he's been clutch. He's been coming up in key pieces. He's been, actually hitting the ball. He's been playing well. So I'm glad to see Marte getting in the mix again. Jeff McNeil has been another guy who's been really, really well, playing well lately. I've been surprised at how good he's been, and it's very entertaining. I'm glad that he's just been he's been doing what we thought Jeff McNeil was going to do 2 years ago. So it's cool to see Jeff just finally taking care of business and being a solid utility player. By the way, the fact that we can put him out in center field, you put him in left, you put him in right, you put him at second base. I don't know if he still plays third, but you could probably still do that. Like having an ultimate util guy and someone who's now coming back and really giving us quality at bats, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. So I do have a couple other guys I'd like to talk about before we keep moving and grooving. Oh, so when I had written down the notes prior to the Rays series, Jeff McNeil, he was on fire over the last week. He had 4 home runs, 10 ribbies, and he's batting .409. That was in a week. Like, that's the type of Jeff McNeil I never thought I'd see. And home runs are a bonus, and I just, once he finds that sweet spot, he's going to be doing great. And then, other guys to talk about, we had Pete. Pete's just doing his thing, helping this team rifle on. So, love Pete. And then, the bats have been battling. Outside of really Alvarez, who's been kind of cold, he's been very up and down. It's weird. I want to see more out of Alvarez. I really do. Pardon me. We haven't been able to recapture that, that rookie season Alvarez. So I hope we can get to that point. But otherwise, Luis Torrens and Hayden Singer, Two guys who've been playing very great defensively from the catcher spot, and same thing with Alvarez. So at least we're getting good defensive play out of them. Now I'll move on to the pitching side of everything. I just can't believe that everyone's been pitching so well outside of this Rays series. Like this Rays series, we fell apart, guys. It was rough. I mean, the Paul Blackburn 1 inning where he just got destroyed didn't help, and then oh my God, Tyler McGill was due for a blow up. He got blew up. I mean, he blew up. And then let's see, the 9-0. Jesus. I'm so glad I didn't watch this game. Oh my God, Griffin Canning got taxed. Let up 6 runs through 4 on 4 hits. Oh my God, and he had 5 walks. Jeez Louise. Yeah, it looks like it was a rough series against Tampa Bay boys, but you know what? We're going to turn around, come out strong against these Braves. It's going to be huge. Huge couple series coming up. But back to the pitching, it's just been this pitching has been great all season long. Kodai being gone for 2 weeks now is going to be a little rough on us, and I want to like the pitching. I really do. But, Peterson's been a rock and Holmes has been a rock. As long as we can kind of hold Griffin Canning together for a little bit longer and Tyler McGill for a little bit longer, just get to the deadline so we could really acquire a starting pitcher who might be able to give us a little bit more value, especially with how long it's taking Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas to get off the IL. Our pitching staff is starting to get a little shaky, especially with Kodai being out for 2 weeks, and these are 2 extremely important weeks. That might be 2 starts. Maybe you play twice against the Braves. That'd be kind of huge. So that's going to be unfortunate. We're going to have to watch. At least we get David Peterson and Clay Holmes, 2 guys who have been very, very dominant so far in their time this year for the Mets. It's been very exciting on that front to actually see Peterson really blossom into the pitcher that we thought he could be. And Clay Holmes, he's over-delivering, honestly. I didn't think he would be that good. So I'm glad he's been playing great. I mean, he's been getting hit a little bit more as of late, a little bit more figured out. But at the same time, this is someone who's now having success from the starting pitching role, and I'm very excited to watch him continue to have success from the starting pitching role. So with that being said, we're going to move on to some injury news now. Yes, I did talk about Kodai a little bit. Has a hamstring strain. He's going to be shut down for 2 weeks, and they're going to reevaluate him then. If he's good to go, they're going to be able to start him right away. But like I said, these 2 weeks he's missing are going to be kind of critical to the Mets, so I really hope he can get back potentially against the Braves. That'd be very awesome. Now, we're going to move on to the next guy. We got Frankie Montas, and they were talking about giving him another 1 to 2 starts in terms of rehab starts before any type of promotion. They were also talking about bringing him out of the bullpen, kind of similar to a Paul Blackburn, just to see if we can get more long relief, if that's a good way to get kind of bring these guys back. So Frankie Montas is another guy who's on the cusp of coming back, which is nice to see. And then we have Sean Manaea, another guy who we really would like to see come out and pitch, someone who we're expecting to be pretty good for us and hopefully pretty good for us in the future. Someone who's kind of developed a more Chris Sale angle since that second half of the Mets season last year, and I really hope he's able to keep this up. But he pitched his first rehab start. I know he pitched his second on Father's Day, so hopefully we can get a quick little checkup on Sean Manaea. Let's see. But, I love Sean Manaea. He's a fun pitcher. I really hope that he's going to come up and come back strong. And let's see. Recently had 2 2/3, striking out 4, allowing 2 singles and a walk. Okay, looks like no runs, so that is awesome. That's a good rehab start. I like to see that. And then, the next couple guys, really just batters who have had some injury on luck, unfortunately, and it's been Jose Siri and Jesse Winker, 2 guys who just can't seem to get off the IL. Jose Siri unfortunately has a setback with he has a fractured tibia, a serious injury. It's going to take a little bit to get back from that, so I'm glad that they're not going to rush him back. So currently they've paused baseball activities until further notice, and they're going to reevaluate. They didn't really say when yet, but they'll reevaluate him down the line and see what what Jose Siri is able to contribute this year. And then we're going to move on to To Jesse Winker, a guy who's been out for multiple weeks at this point with a right oblique strain, and this has just been plaguing him all season long. It's still going to take him a couple more weeks before we see any Jesse Winker news, before we see any rehab starts, which he's going to do those, so it's at least a month out at this point before we get any more Jesse Winker action. The last guy is going to be Mark Vientos, but I'm not sure if Mark Vientos came back yet, but I will say if he didn't, he's coming back, within the next week. If he's back, then he's back. And I kind of wanted to move on to one more thing real quick. I want to talk about some potential trade rumors. Guys, I think that would, kind of be interesting for the Mets to pick up. Pieces that might not be too expensive. We have different ranges here, so we'll just get right into it. I think one guy that might not be too expensive, someone who might be interesting, is Tomoyoki Sugano. That was a mouthful, but oh, come on. Is this Control C? Awesome. Sugano. Love that. Yeah, but he has like I believe he has a sub 3 ERA this year. Let's see. Okay, he's a 3.38 through 80 innings. He's been pitching well. He's on a 1-year deal. He's a guy you can get for cheap. Maybe you can get more out of than you expect. You can even move him to the bullpen need be, and I don't mind picking him up. I think this would just be someone fun for the Mets. He's a ground ball pitcher. Seems like that's kind of his specialty here. And in all honesty, the Mets work well with ground ball pitching. It's a lot of what they have. That's what Clay Holmes is. So, adding another guy like that, I think could be effective for the Mets. And, I don't mind that type of pickup. Another guy who I don't think will be that expensive come the trade deadline is going to be Yusei Kikuchi. So he did sign a deal with the LA Angels. It's so hard to spell these names at the same time and try to type them, or try to say them and type them at the same time. Yusei you know what? I'll just keep making this work. So, yeah, Yusei Kikuchi. He's been a fun pitcher this year. Jesus, really? Okay. Yeah, he's been a fun pitcher this year. He's thrown to the tune of a 3 ERA, quite literally. I mean, he has 82 innings pitched. He's been a very effective pitcher. He does have 43 walks let up this year, so walks have been a little bit of an issue. But definitely someone who's way more of a strikeout pitcher. You can definitely rely on him a little bit more come some maybe important outings later in the season. Did have a Cy Young, or almost Cy Young year last year. He was 9th in the race. Went from Toronto to Houston. Had some pretty good outings. Unfortunately, just wasn't that great on Toronto, but it was phenomenal on Houston. Might be a fun guy for the Mets to pick up. And then, one last guy who I think might be kind of cheap, maybe a Blade Tidwell and one other piece, which might not be anything too huge. Maybe a Luis Robert Jr. I know he hasn't been great this year. I believe he's batting to the tune of like a 187, but he does have a ridiculous amount of steals. I believe he's in the mid-20s. Let's see. Okay, he's batting 194. He has 28 ribbies, 6 home runs, but he has 21 steals. That's something that I feel like the Mets could definitely add for cheap. He's a solid outfielder, Gold Glover. You get the club option at the end of this year. You can keep him for 2 more years on ARB. I think that's kind of a huge deal, especially when you can get a talent that's won a Silver Slugger, won a Gold Glove, high up in Rookie of the Year, a guy who's shown some crazy flashes of talent, but just doesn't have the team around him to help him, to protect him a little bit, to give him the ability to take better at-bats. He's kind of the only guy in that lineup I'd even be worried about, and really, you can just take care of business. He's batting sub 200 right now, but I don't know. I think plugging him into the Mets system, get a little Eric Chavez helping him out in the batting cage, I feel like we can make some magic happen with that. I like him. I think we can get him for rather cheap. And then, maybe some other guys to consider. I don't think the Mets would go after a Jarren Duran. I know the Red Sox look like they're already de-piecing after selling Devers to the Giants, but I have a tough time seeing them selling Jarren Duran. He's just a very good ball player. But maybe you see Felix Bautista go somewhere. Maybe he gets traded to the Mets. He does have 2 more years of arbitration, which does make him rather valuable. And he's come off of Tommy John as a pretty effective closer. I don't think this would be a bad piece for the Mets to add. They do have Diaz going into a contract year. This is a club option they have for him. They could take it another 3 years, $20.5 million. I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do. This is a new regime under Stearns. They've done very different things pitching wise. I'm very intrigued to see if that Diaz contract sticks. So I think maybe they do take a run at Felix Bautista. I feel like that could be interesting, but you never know. 50-50. He's definitely going to be a little bit more expensive for sure. So that is the one thing to be said about that. And then the last guy, I think maybe Mason Miller is a weird price range. The A's are bad, and Mason Miller's been bad. So I think maybe, you go, hey, you have 4 more years of ARB. We think you have some stuff. We think we can add to it. Maybe he's not a phenomenal piece this year, but maybe he's a piece that you could use him, give him an off season, let him learn, let him get that Jeremy Hefner treatment, and all of a sudden he comes out as a stud, setup guy for Diaz. That could be a lot of fun. So, with that being said, that's kind of all I have for this episode. I'd like to say thank you guys for coming out, listening, enjoying the day with me, and taking some time talking some Mets. Can't beat that. Now, with that being said, take it easy and stay idiotic.